everybody. I know it. Better late than never is what they tell me, but I'm not sure that that's exactly correct. But nevertheless, I'm here. I apologize. I'm 10 minutes late. I am going to blame it on the media. Yes, I was trying to make heads or tails of all that's being reported about the Nashville school shooter. I am willing to stand firmly on the position, no matter what they say, that Audrey Hale is a biological female whose preferred pronouns were male. And that's where I draw the line. That's where I am. So my original video I actually took it and put it on, I think I put it on private, or I may have put it on members only, but I put it on private or members only until I could make sure that what I was saying was accurate, that she is female using male pronouns. And so that will be going back to being available as a live for everybody tomorrow. But for tonight, it'll stay members only. Okay. All right. Now then, we have a lot going on. And please, please remember the families and the friends of those people that were killed today. It is devastating, and having those political overtones do not take away the devastation of what that community has experienced. It's not a political issue. It's not about gun control. It's not about LGBTQ rights. It is 100% about the families and the friends that lost their loved ones. And there were 3 9-year-old children murdered. And that is just the ultimate reality that we have to live with. Okay, now then, Stephen Smith, my goodness, this is, there's so much to unpack in this particular case. And so I want to talk about Stephen Smith and what went wrong in 2015. And then I want to go by I believe this is my Lori Vallow notes. Let me make sure I'm right. Yep. These are all Lori Vallow, Brian Koberger, and Lori Vallow. Or Murdoch? Let's see. No, okay, Murdoch auction. That's what I was going to talk about. Dozens of times. Michael Duncan. Okay. All right. So I'm making sure I've got the right notes. There's so many cases going on right now that it is, well, it's pretty unbelievable if you're researching these and trying to keep them, keep the facts and whatnot in order, keep it all, straightened out. So Stephen Smith died in 2015. And everybody here, we went through the whole Murdoch trial together. You guys know that he was friends with Buster Murdoch. And what you may not know is that at the time that Stephen Smith died 8 years ago, in the days and the weeks after the death, there were many rumors that actually placed not only Buster Murdoch at the scene, but Paul Murdoch. That Paul and Buster, along with some other same age guys, that they were all in a truck together, and they encountered Stephen, and then terrible things happen. So to me, that is very interesting, because we know that Paul was also there when the housekeeper was killed, when she fell down the stairs and had the terrible head injury. So it just seems like there's so much death. It's a dangerous prospect to be a friend with a Murdoch. You know what I mean? There's a lot of people that met very curious endings as either a Murdoch or as a friend of a Murdoch. So even the grandfather, he died in a quite mysterious way. He was actually run over by a train, and the conductor of the train said that it actually looked like he intentionally got run over, like he wanted to be run over. And the family benefited financially extremely well as a result of this train wreck. So I don't know, there's a parallel there that's very important, isn't it? In terms of, the Murdoch family history is a train wreck. And and then the grandfather technically did die because of a train wreck. So Stephen Smith was 19 years old. That was 8 years ago. He was a classmate of Buster, and he was openly gay. This wasn't something that was hidden around the small town or anything like that. It was out in the open. He was Stephen was well loved. He had friends, but it was interesting because his mother, Sandy, she came out in the weeks after the death and never really completely gave up, but she kept saying to anyone that would listen, something happened to Stephen that wasn't accidental. Now, there were no more than 14 different reports of Buster Murdoch being, some of the reports say involved, but the question is, you're not sure, do they mean involved with Stephen in a private way, a romantic way, or do they mean involved in the tragic death of Stephen? And it's a little bit hard to parse out depending on who you're talking to. But regardless of exactly how these things are worded, I don't think you can ignore Stephen Smith's mother, Sandy. I don't think you can ignore her, nor the 14 other people that spoke with law enforcement and said, hey, you need to talk to Buster Murdoch. I don't know how you can ignore that, right? Now, I know that Buster's got tons of money and he's got a team of attorneys, and he has gone public and he has totally denied any type of involvement in the tragic death of Stephen Smith. So he has voiced that. He has said it publicly. So in no way am I saying that he did do something or he didn't do anything. I'm not a law enforcement person. I'm not an attorney. I am simply reading these newspaper articles and I'm reacting, and I have no way of knowing what happened. I do think if we're going to have to look at the Murdochs anyway related to Stephen Smith, I think that Paul seems to be the common link. I don't know what you guys think. Leave it, put it in a short comment. What do you think about this rumor, one of the 14 rumors? What do you think about this rumor that Paul was in the truck with Buster and the others? How do y'all feel about that? Do y'all think that's just small town America, good old boy system trying to muddy the waters? Do you think it has a ring of truth? Hey, Sammy, how are you doing? Do you think it has a ring of truth? Welcome, Christina. Hi, Christola. Hey, Mary Rose. Look, if this was my family or your family, and somebody said, oh, you better go check out old Jules Thought down the road there, people are talking, you're just going to say, what are you talking? That's silly. There's no history. There's never been anything uncomfortable about Jules Thought's lifestyle or anything. What do you mean? Go check her out. But with this particular family, there's some realities there. For example, the father of Buster and Paul is basically spending the rest of his life in prison for the murder of his wife and his youngest son. Oh, yeah. And he's got a pesky little problem of 99 other charges. Oh, yeah. And what about the young woman who has now gone public, her face on camera, correct? On camera, saying, yeah, I was involved with Alec Murdoch. He paid for sexual services and he choked me during our encounters. There was more than one encounter. Where there's smoke, there's fire. Kelly, oh, thank you so much for joining and becoming a member. I appreciate that. Thank you. So it's not like somebody just picked out a family or a kid to target. There are some very real problems. And here's another problem. Paul's girlfriend, she was interviewed for a very well done, in my opinion, a great podcast, and future documentary. And she says, she sits in the chair in the middle of a beautiful, stately, room, and the camera is right there on her. And she says, Paul physically assaulted me. He physically assaulted me. He forced sex on me. He hit me. He cursed me. He called me names. He drank to the point of oblivion. Okay, so there's that too, right? There's that problem too. I know during the trial, Buster, I know that you guys tried to make it sound like your brother was just, this cool little guy who enjoyed the outdoors and just was soft-spoken and kind and sweet. But the reality is that he drank in a way that makes the majority of people uncomfortable. How about you guys? When you saw, hey, Martin, welcome. It's good to see you. Yes, the untouchable. It's the story of the modern day untouchables. Yes, absolutely. Those of you that saw the videos of Paul when he was drinking, you could see his eyes. He was not able to focus. You could hear his voice as he tried to talk. You could see the muscles, the neurological disruption in his hands and arms, when he got really intoxicated. When you saw that, we've got about 50 people in here. When you guys saw that, did it make you want to look away because it was so sad or so bizarre? Or did you look at this kid and think, oh, well, that's perfectly natural. People that drink look like that. If you felt so uncomfortable watching and feeling sorry for this kid, put a 1. If you think it's just normal part of being drunk, put a 2. And for Buster, because we know you're looking at these videos, that's okay. I would too if it was me and my family. I would. But look at the responses in here. The drinking that your brother was doing, sanctioned by your dad and your mom, was something that the majority of people find disturbing. And your brother's a pretty young guy. I never felt sorry for them. I thought he looked like a shit-faced drunk. Well, there's that too. Martin says, no, it was absolutely normal. Okay. Martin is in here stirring up the trouble. All right. So, yeah. So the parents not only allowed the drinking, it was actually promoted by them. They had parties. They drank with the kids. And the night that those kids loaded up in that boat and headed back up the river, all of the parents that were there knew the kids were drunk and the parents were drunk as well. That is the reality. And it's uncomfortable. And we wish it wasn't so, but it is so. And you cannot ignore the the story, the words of the young woman who was a victim of assault by Paul Murdoch. He punched her in the leg in the middle of this, gropey, kind of aggressive, sloppy attempts at sex. The night of the boat wreck, he hit her very hard, and it stunned her friends into silence. It was very common for him to call her nasty names. And my question to you is this: where do you think he learned this behavior? Where do you think he learned it? The majority of guys will absolutely not hit or push around a woman, especially in public, around other guys, because they know it's not appropriate. They know that there's like my husband would step in and beat another man that tried to hit a woman while he was standing there. That's honest to God truth. There's no way he would accept that. So you've got to ask yourself, what was it happening in Paul's life that made this a regular occurrence? Now, I think many of us agree that all of that cash, all the money, all of the reputation and status and power, I think we know that for some people, money and power is very attractive, and sometimes it will make people accept bad behavior when they really shouldn't. That sometimes people's wealth or societal position can sometimes make people overlook when they misbehave. Remember when Paul and the girlfriend had the wreck, she was going to call 911, and Paul called the grandfather, and Maggie and Alec showed up to pull him out of the ditch, and Maggie got onto her. Maggie said, "That was so dumb for you to call 911. Don't you realize you could get Paul in trouble?" Well, maybe Paul was a young man that needed to be in trouble. Maybe somewhere Paul and perhaps Buster needed to experience some consequences for the choices that they are making. It's all conjecture based on what we heard in the trial. Okay? So when Buster's name is tossed around, connected to the murder of 19-year-old Stephen Smith, and you find out that the mother of Stephen Smith is practically begging and pleading for some type of sanity, some type of intervention on the behalf of the deceased Stephen Smith. And you find out that in 2015, when the accident occurred, the investigation took some very unusual turns. The turns were so unusual. And listen, we know that Alec Murdoch doesn't like SLED. Paul Murdoch did not like SLED either. And more importantly, SLED did not like Alec Murdoch and Paul, right? And so then you think to yourself, but why would SLED let them get away with not investigating Stephen Smith's murder? Why would they turn it into either, at the best, manslaughter and perhaps a simple accident where it was a hit and run? The person hit somebody, panicked, and, took off. So I am going to put up some photographs. Now, I want to be really careful about this, y'all. If you have a weak stomach, then you don't want to look at some of the pictures that I'm going to put up as we talk about this. I'll give you a warning if there's going to be a bad one. So I'm going to use this one first. There's a bad picture on there. Okay, so the lower right picture, I tried to make it as faint as possible. So you might want to just look at the upper left-hand corner, or just turn away and not look at all while I talk about these pictures that are on here. Okay. Now these were pictures. Let me make sure you guys can see that before I keep talking. Y'all can see that? Okay. Now, these are photographs. These are part of the file that SLED has now that they're using for their current investigation. These were gathered back in 2015. These photographs were had in 2015 by law enforcement there, Moselle, Crocketville, I don't know, whatever that area, the county is. They did have these, okay? So I'm going to point a couple of things out that make this a real problem that you ask, but why would you call this a manslaughter or an accident? Were you paying attention to what the evidence was showing you, right? So the first thing I'm draw attention to is the drawing of the stick figure, the mannequin in the top right, beside my eyes, okay? You notice that they've got him perfectly along the solid yellow line, and it's nearly perfectly aligned. The legs are kind of bent a little bit, and the feet are side by side. The head is right center. Okay. Why is that one long arm pulled out? Why would that be important? Well, maybe that shows that a couple of people picked him up, one by the legs, the other by his arms, and that somebody pulled him into position. Now, if you notice, a car coming or going would be coming. If we look at the picture of the road, the car coming and going, either coming straight toward you or heading out in the other direction toward close to you, going toward the truck and the car. If somebody was hit, a car hit them. Hey, wait. Hey. If a car hit them, then you would expect that the body would be drug a little ways or roll with that much force to cause that much head injury. But notice, you see where they put the box that shows where the body was located, found? Remember, the head was right here. Notice that the blood is draining off down the incline this way. You don't have any blood up here, and you don't have any blood down here. There's also no brake marks. There's nothing here to suggest that there was a collision of any kind. And again, if you look at the location of the body, I don't know how you can say he accidentally landed in that position. He very well looks like he was placed. All right. Okay, now then, let me pop over here and see exactly. Evidence says otherwise. Blue metallic microscopic paint chips on his head injury, like off of a metal bat. And later on, Sandy, his mother, they do come forward and say many of these rumors that the kids are putting out, they are saying that Stephen Smith died because he was beaten with a baseball bat. Okay? He's beaten with a baseball bat. Nobody says, oh, there's rumor that they got drunk and they accidentally hit someone in the middle of the road. No, that's not part of the rumors at all. The Murdoch boys played on the same baseball team. The rumors have it that there was a group of boys, 4 or 5, they gave names, and Paul and Buster were both in the truck. So we'll get to that, because this is upsetting when you look at this. I don't know, honestly, I don't know how Stephen's mother has made it 8 years knowing this, knowing all of this information. How in the world did she make it? I feel so bad for her, so bad that she could not get anyone to listen. On a better note, they wanted to exhume the body to gather more information. Now, SLED did come out and say that they have now reopened the case as a homicide, and that the evidence was so overwhelming that they did not need to exhume his body to know that this was a homicide. That's how bad this is. Okay. Now, when the accident report was written up, what the medical coroner, the medical examiner said, and I don't have it with me or I'd read it word for word, but what the medical examiner said is that he died by blunt force trauma to the head. And then here's where it got uncomfortable. Like there's a cover up. Okay. Here's where it got uncomfortable. Hey, AK, welcome. It's good to see you. He died by blunt force injury to his head, like if you were hit by the mirror of a car driving by. So it is the cause and manner of death is blunt force injury to the head, and the example is like if you got hit by a car, for example. Or you got beat over the head with a baseball bat. There's another example. Correct? Okay. So it does, the people that are investigating, the attorneys for Sandy, Stephen Smith's mother, they have said they feel very safe saying they believe that there was a cover-up in 2015 and that the cover-up was designed to keep the investigation out of SLED's hands and to keep the investigation there in the local county. And of course, we know that the Murdochs, long arm of the law, that they were the long arm of the law in that county, right? So it made it very difficult, even though Sandy Smith, even though she had an attorney, even though they saw this evidence and they recognized how dramatically incorrect the police investigation and reporting was, and it didn't exactly lie, but it was incredibly misleading, right? So even though they recognized that to overcome the name of Murdoch at that time, 8 years ago, was nearly impossible. The ability to overlook that would have been almost impossible to achieve. Now, when Paul and Maggie were killed and Alec ended up arrested, and all of the information came out about the financial crimes and the whole furor around Alec Murdoch and the Murdoch name, that caused the boat accident. Together, the sum total is that it caused the state level investigators to pay attention to what was happening close to home in the Good Old Boys Club. And they started paying attention. And so Steve Peterson he's one of those that stepped up and was trying to get people to pay attention and notice this case. And so finally, SLED, South Carolina Law Enforcement Division, said, wow, this should have been handled as a homicide. But when the state accident investigation board decided that it wasn't theirs, that it was a homicide, they gave it back to the county, and that was how it kind of all got swept under the rug. So they've got, these are the South Carolina notes and investigation photographs that we're looking at right now. And I'm about to put up another couple of photographs that might be considered upsetting for you if you have a weak stomach. So you may want to close your eyes for a minute or put your hand over your your screen or something, because I'm going to show it just to talk about something important. So in the 2015 report, they say blunt force head trauma like getting hit by a car, like a mirror on a truck, hitting your head as you stand in the middle of the road. And ostensibly, I guess that is to explain away why there's no broken bones anywhere else, why there's no, asphalt burn on his legs, his clothes are not torn. In fact, everything, he looks just fine, but his head is just beaten to a pulp. Okay, a pulp. The skull is fractured. I mean, it was terrible. Now, they all said, it's an accident. And then SLED goes, no, this isn't an accident. This is something else. And then it kind of got passed off. But here's your smoking gun right here. If laying in the very center of the road, perfectly parallel to the lines of the road, here's your smoking gun. Look at his shoes. Look at the laces on his shoes. They're not tied on either one. They're not tied. They're very loose so that you can just slide your foot in and slide your foot off. It's the sand life. It's the sandy life, right? Or the salty life. Easy in, easy out. Tell me why a man who's hit with a car in the middle of the road doesn't tumble and roll, has no scrapes anywhere on his body, his head is pulverized, and both shoes are still comfortably on his feet. Why is that? How is that possible? So beyond a shadow of a doubt, I think he didn't get hit by a car. Can we agree on that? This is a young man who did not get hit by a car. And again, the car would have either been coming from the distance, coming directly toward you if you're standing on the yellow line, or it would have passed you by and headed off around the right-hand turn in front of you. And either way, the body would have tumbled either toward you or away from you along that yellow line, or maybe out in the ditch. But you would have seen evidence of blood being spread out as this dramatic, violent event is unfolding. And that is not what you have. You have a neat little crime scene right there in the middle of that orange square. And what you see rolling off down here is, in fact, blood stain that ran off like a river, no spatter. There was no spatter anywhere. That's really something. All right. Take this off right here. There you go. All right. Now then, I saw a man hit by a vehicle. He lost shoes, and there would have been few to no cars out there at 3 or 4 a.m., not in the middle of nowhere in the county. That's small. Okay, so now that brings us, they're all allegedly innocent, staged crime scene and murder. How is this overlooked? No, I don't think it was overlooked. I think it's a good old boy system. It seems like when you go back and you read, it seems like there was this interchange between, oh, this is a car accident, and then the crime scene, the traffic division that would have been investigating an accident, the traffic division said, no, this isn't ours. This is not a traffic crime. This is a homicide crime. And at that point, it left the traffic collision division and then was given back to the county, where it should have been investigated as a homicide at that point. And of course, that's the Murdoch kingdom. And so it magically everything just disappeared, got lost along the way. It's my understanding the deputy coroner did, but was conveniently terminated before the results were known. Thank you, Gregory. I appreciate that information. It's a staged crime scene, like Alex did many times before. Well, never in the world has there been a man so intimately connected to murders and deaths that he didn't do, right? It is disturbing at best. So, again, remember this: 14 people went to the cops and told them, well, this is what I heard. Well, I don't know if anybody else has told you that, but did you hear about Buster and Stephen? Well, I heard Buster and Stephen. And so there were 14 incidents of people reporting some sort of involvement. Either Buster and Stephen were very close friends, or Buster knows what happened to Stephen, or Buster was there when whatever happened to Stephen. And one of the rumors that I find to be incredibly interesting is that supposedly Paul was in the truck. There was a group of about 5 of these young men, high school students, who were all in a truck together when whatever happened. Okay. That's one of the rumors. These are all rumors, I'm telling you. But 14 of them. Think about that. 14 rumors. I was very disturbed when Paul's girlfriend told the story of them going over to the Murdoch law firm, where Alec had a ton of alcohol and drinks, and he let the high school kids drink freely, and they'd go over there and drink, then they'd go back to the parade or party or whatever they had going on in town. One of the reasons that it is very disturbing to me is because that is one of the ways that adults who might be breaking the law, that's how they earn the silence of the young people. The young people tend to do the gossiping, finding out, these things. And it is one way to keep them quiet, to keep things under control, to earn their loyalty, if you will. But Stephen Smith's head was so badly damaged that the initial reports by the police said that he was shot in the head. That he was shot. It wasn't until the medical examiner came out and said, no. It's like, if you got hit by the window, the mirror of a car passing by. It made it confusing to hear that, because you could follow up and say, or like getting the hell beat out of you with a bat. That would work too. But they, initially they believed that it was a bullet, a gunshot wound to his head. It was so, the damages were so devastating and severe. There were no tire marks on the road. Think about this. If a rear view mirror hit anyone in the head, the human skull is fairly strong. If it hit anyone in the head, wouldn't you expect to find glass? Wouldn't the mirror break? I don't care if it hit the back of the mirror, the front of the mirror. I think the glass would probably break from the impact. And yet, you saw the road. It was pristine, other than where his skull was so badly damaged that he bled out, in this nice little neat river of blood going down into the ditch. So no tire marks, no glass in the road. He was simply lying on his back. His knees, his body was turned a little bit, and his knees were kind of bent equally the same. And his very loose shoes were still on the proper foot. And one of the investigators came out and said that he had worked a lot of traffic accidents where a pedestrian had been run over, and they always get knocked out of their shoes. Always. That he had never seen a person get run over and them still have their shoes on. Not even boots. And when you saw how loose the shoes were. Oh, sorry, that's my little dog. Hold on just a minute. Kitty, you're being very loud. Hush. Sorry about that. Hold on just a second, Joe. Sorry about that. Sorry about that. My dogs don't often bark like that. When they do, then it's time to get the 12 gauge shotgun and go walk around the house. So there's nobody here, so everything's fine. All right. So let me get my notes back up. All right. So no skid marks on the road. No blood spatter or signs of dragging a body. No glass, broken glass. Shoes on both feet, perfectly fine. And 14 separate stories reported to police that the Murdaugh boys somehow, whether they were saying that Stephen Smith was very good friends with the Murdaugh kids, or that they know what happened to Stephen Smith. And I can't make that. I don't know what that is. Even his phone was still in his pocket. So if he'd been hit, drugged, rolled, unlikely that his phone would have stayed in his pants. So the cops, Corporal Duncan, some others, they've all said it's very strange that you have this set of very clear markers that don't look anything like what you associate with a pedestrian being hit by a car. And all of them would take away that idea that it would work against that allegation. The hard evidence in no way suggests that Stephen Smith was hit in his head or anywhere else by a car that continued and just drove away and left him there to die. It's just not there. There was also, let's see, on December 7th, there was an email that was received as an anonymous tip. It says that Don Terrio Aiken, along with another male, well, two other males, one of them being Murdaugh, were the ones that caused the death. So there are a list of 14 of those types of stories, people calling in and saying, we know what happened. You better look at this person. You better look at that person. Now, I thought there were two more things that I thought were incredibly interesting, although it doesn't have anything to do with the Murdaughs. It has to do with Stephen Smith. One is within 12 hours of this accident, of them discovering Stephen's body, they ordered a rape kit. Now, I don't know about you, but I don't think a hit and run typically gets a rape kit. And there are investigators that have gone on Ashley Banfield's show and said, no, I've never seen anybody order a rape kit for an accident, a car accident. So within 12 hours, there was a rape kit, which means they took the evidence, they collected the body, took the body to the coroner, and the coroner noticed and said, this kid has had a terrible night. Right? Well, then, if that's the case, why wasn't this noted by the medical examiner? Why did the medical examiner say, oh, he got run over by a car, maybe, but they ordered a rape kit? Why? So that's number one. Number two is that Sandy Smith has admitted, has said that she was aware and she knew that Stephen Smith made money online for, kind of like an OnlyFans type of situation. Okay, so he was making, he had made some money that way. She knew about it. She didn't approve of it. So, so there's, again, those things don't point to the Murdaughs, but when you look at the total amount of the unusual, having a profile online where he's basically trading sexual favors for cash, the 14 reports that this wasn't a hit and run and they know who did it, the shoes still being on the feet, the pattern of the blood in the road, the way the body was lying, no glass anywhere, only the head being so badly injured that it looks like a gunshot wound. The police, the investigator not even mentioning the rape kit issue or the fact that they uncovered that he was living a dangerous lifestyle. None of those things were brought up. It was all nothing to see here. It was just a car accident. That's the red flag. That's the thing that matters. what did they say? Victimology, right? Is this a person like Suzanne Morphew was not leading a high, she was not leading a lifestyle that would be considered dangerous, that was putting her in contact with dangerous people. But I think if you're doing sex work online, you're probably coming across some people that may not be completely safe, perhaps, maybe. All right. So the great thing is, and let me say this, I said it at the beginning of this video and in the middle of this video, and I'm going to say it again. Buster Murdaugh has just categorically denied any knowledge of what happened to Stephen Smith and his death, any involvement. He doesn't acknowledge knowing anything or being anywhere near, and he sends his prayers and love and well wishes to the Smith family. And he said, he's very sorry for what happened. All right. So that brings us up to where we are today. This is not a witch hunt. This is not Alec Murdaugh got in trouble and now let's just keep on dumping on and piling on the Murdaughs because, Alec deserves it. That's not what this is, right? You've now seen what little bit that they've released to the general public. If this was your child and you had that kind of evidence, don't you think you would want there to be an investigation that was real? Okay. My animals were acting so strange tonight. Sorry. So it's not a witch hunt. There's a very good reason for them to open this case. Now, Sandy has asked, she wanted them to exhume the body for some additional evidence. She had asked, there was a $15,000 GoFundMe that was set up to try and make that possible. If you go and have this request to exhume the body, if you have the cash to complete the process and to send it to the proper lab, and I think there's one in North Carolina. I think that's where they sent Tammy Daybell's body, was North Carolina. That if you have the cash to pay for it, then you're more likely to have a judge grant your request. And so I'm so happy to report that she's now the $15,000 GoFundMe is now upwards of nearly $80,000. So it's wonderful because it gives her the ability to get some answers related to the death of her son and to be able to pay for investigators and attorneys. And because this is not, this is a person that barely gets by paycheck to paycheck. This is not a Murdaugh, where money's easy. She's like me and you, just good people trying to get by. So that is really great. And that's kind of where things lie right now. They have been, my understanding is that they have been granted the ability to exhume the body. And I think the local newspaper reported it, and now they're waiting on a date. So they may not even tell us that it's done until after they've completed the process. That's kind of what they did with Tammy Daybell. So that's where we are. Maybe there's only a few states, Cinnamon. There's only a couple of states in the United States that can that are equipped to deal with the body that's been exhumed and to do the type of testing that they need. So it could be Virginia. It could be. Let me see if I can find that really quick. Hold on a second. Let me see. Says, okay, so the body is supposed to be exhumed. That was reported by CBS News. Private autopsy. Where are they going to send the body? Hold on, I'm looking. I've got a grade six. Well, at the time it was 6,000. It's now higher than that. The mother Sandy wants people talking about the case. She doesn't. She's tired of it being swept under a rug. It's not saying where they're going to send him. Autopsy is so exhuming the body is 15,000. Autopsy will be 7,000, and the private medical examiner makes $750 an hour. So she needed the money to get justice for her child. So it's good. Yeah, it's not these are not they're not updating, they're not like reporting which state they're going to do it in, but when chain of custody and private autopsy in a reopened murder case, why would the family have to pay? They are paying for the exhumation of the body and then the private autopsy. And here's another question, AK, because they're paying for it, that means that prosecutor that if the person that they believe did this, if they have a public defender, then they footed the bill and it'll get turned over to their defense attorneys anyway. But to have it, they have it. And don't forget, SLED did come forward and say that the evidence was so overwhelming that they didn't need the body to be exhumed to declare it a homicide. No, Smith will not get her money back. She knows that she has to pay this to make it happen. Well, maybe, but not. If it was the county that hid it and covered it up to begin with, then they probably would not be so excited to pay for the, exhuming the body, right? They probably wanted their own people so it wouldn't be any shady dealings. There's that side too of it. Yeah, absolutely, Mrs. R. Yeah, I agree. Okay, so it's very interesting, isn't it? And I think it's sad when people say, "Oh, it's a witch hunt." It's a witch hunt. I don't think it's a witch hunt. Look at his feet. There's no way this kid got run over by a car. He was placed there, just like what's in this picture on the top right. He was placed there. And it's embarrassing. I had one more thing I wanted to show y'all. Okay, hold on just a second. Sage, you're driving me crazy. Quit. There's nobody out there. We went outside and walked around with a gun and everything. There was nobody out there. It's okay. All right, so they were at Sandy Way Road Baptist Church. I had this pulled up earlier and I accidentally. South Carolina. All right. Okay, Sandy Run Baptist Church. Sandy Run Road, Baptist Church, Hampton. And now the directions to Moselle. Basically, between the location of the body okay, let me share this with y'all. In between, the location of Stephen Smith's body to the house where the Murdochs were living. Share the screen. If you go this way down Altman Road, it's 6.9 miles. If you go down to Highway 63 and then cut up here to Salkehatchie and then over, it's like 7.2 miles. So when they tell you that, and the reason that I put my starting market right here by the Baptist Church is because that is where they actually have the cross with Stephen's name. He was literally located just maybe 100 yards from the church parking lot. So it is a rural area. So Hampton is, the closest, fairly close big city, but it is a rural area. You've got to remember Moselle property was 1,700 acres, right? And his body was picked up about 7 miles, whichever direction you decided to go. His body was found approximately 7 miles from the Murdoch property. Amazing, isn't it? Amazing. Now, that by itself doesn't mean that they did anything. Okay. I mean, somebody's got to own the property it's next to. But 14 people saying the M word, it's very disturbing. I wouldn't be walking out there with my S&W and Adobe. Yeah, his wallet was in the car, phone in his pocket. They need to reopen this, y'all. This is the reason I wanted to do this, because I've heard people saying, "Oh, it's a witch hunt." Alex, he got it stuck to him. They got him for the murders of Paul and Maggie, and they ought to leave Buster alone, and they ought to leave the rest of the Murdoch family alone and let them go in peace. And I've heard all that. This is not a witch. If you guys, after seeing this tonight, if you think it's a witch hunt, put a 1. If you think that you see something that suggests that there was a cover up and it should have been investigated seriously, put a 2. And if you don't care, put a 3. Where are we at? 2. Yeah, but you know what, AK? I don't make many friends. Have you noticed? I tend to irritate people. That's okay, though. Sometimes I irritate people, and I don't even know why they're irritated at me. People are mad at me right now. I don't know why. Some drama going on that I don't know anything about. All right. Hey, Kathy. All right. So we're all on the same page. This isn't a witch hunt. This is not a witch hunt. If this was your child, you would be just like Sandy. Thank you, Mrs. R. Thank you. If this was your child, you would want some answers as well. And I think Sandy has waited 8 years, and that's long enough. I think to have her child's death properly investigated, to get to the real truth, no matter where it leads. listen, you're going to get your fill of Murdoch mania because Alec Murdoch is in it up to his eyeballs. He's never going to be without charges. And I personally think that the state is looking at organized crime, thinking he may be the guy that can turn all those, turn the system over to them. I don't think Alec Murdoch would ever talk. I don't think that's who he is. But nevertheless, I think where Stephen's concerned, there needs to be an investigation that the mother of Stephen can rest easily at night and feel like there was justice. No matter how it turns out. I think she just needs the confidence to know that finally people are going, yeah, this doesn't look right. Sandy is exactly correct. This looks very, very strange. Okay, I would do exactly what she has done. I would not rest until I got justice for my child or any family member. Absolutely, Mrs. R. Agreed completely. Yes. Yep. All right, people. I would be screaming from the rooftops. There you go, thing one. More like the rug pulled out from under her. Yeah, it's terrible. Terrible, terrible. Sandy Smith is a pillar of strength and grace. She is a truly amazing woman. Absolutely hybrid. Agree completely. Yeah. All right, everybody. Y'all are awesome. Well, Martin, something happened, didn't it? For one thing, if you go back and you listen to those phone calls, you clearly hear Paul say that he was holding her up and he let her go and she fell and hit her head again. I mean, what were they doing? Just knocking her around? So it is everything about them is weird. I've never seen anybody take multi-million-dollar land deals and hand them over for $10. And yet that Moselle property, it happened twice. They had one transfer of 1,700 acres and this beautiful, stately home. They had one transfer that was $10 when it went from the Alec Murdoch's friend, and it was transferred to Maggie's name. That was the first one. And the guy died. Remember, Alec took over his whole power of attorney and finished all of his business dealings, no doubt lining his pockets with gold in the process. And then they turned around. It went from his friend to Alec. And then another time they did a $10 transaction where Alec Murdoch then gifted the property to Maggie and did that for $10. And Maggie would tell you straight up, she didn't even like Moselle. She hated it out there. She had a beautiful beach house. Why would you want to be out there around all the, flies and whatnot? So lots of strange dealings. I've never known anybody that owned multiple islands, and yet those islands are covered in water half the day. And yet you got boats. There's pictures of boats tied up at these islands. What are they doing there? What are they dropping off there? So they were up to no good. There were so many things that family was involved in that it's crazy. It's crazy. And it really gets under my skin. I don't have any parallel to organized crime. I don't know anything about that. I wouldn't know how to live in a world like that. I would be a nervous wreck all the time. But I do understand about underage drinking, and I do understand about family alcoholism and drug abuse. And I do recognize a young kid who's got a serious addiction, and his family, his parents think it's cute and think it's okay, and send him on his way to, drunk drive-in of a boat where a young lady is killed. I do know what that is. I do have some parallel experience to that. And the majority of the parents I know would never let their child reach that level of intoxication when they were in the same room with them. Never. Yeah. So AK wants everybody to know this is a public service announcement for the AK guy. When AK gets really rich, he has millions and he has a lot of islands and he has a housekeeper and the housekeeper falls and dies. And then a ton of life insurance money makes its way into AK's pocket. He wants everybody to know he 100% did not do it. Y'all just got to get that right straight up front. Yeah, Bubba inherited him some shrimp boats. Absolutely, Martin. Old Buster Boy is going to be rolling in the shrimp. It's stinky, but it's good money. You know what I mean? Yeah, critters. No, it was a crazy story. But you can hear him on the phone. He says it clearly. And you're like, what the hell are you doing picking her up? Why aren't you trying to make her stand up? She's mumbling. Leave her alone. Don't move her. Call ambulance. All right. In the Gannon Stout case, they made grand headway today with the jury pool. So they're sitting at, well, some people think they got 105 jurors. I thought they had 107. So I'm either wrong. I've got two too many. 2 people got kicked off and I didn't notice, wasn't paying attention. So we're somewhere between 105 and 107. And the judge wants 110 from which to choose 18 jurors. Correct? Those 18 jurors, so they're meeting again tomorrow to get the last 3 or maybe 5, whoever's wrong, to get the last 3 to 5 potential jurors. And then on April the 3rd, they'll all come together and they'll choose 12 seated jurors and they'll have 6 alternates. And then they'll be ready to roll at that point. On the same day, oh my God, on the same day, April 3rd, this will be the beginning of, I got to say it the right way, the Queen of the Damned. This will be the day that her trial also starts. And they will be doing jury selection and whatnot. Couple things that I wanted to say about the Queen of the Damned. Now then, the prosecution is not prepared. I say that one more time. The prosecution, those prosecuting the Queen of the Damned, they're not ready to go. I don't know why. But because they're idiots. Because they're getting advice from Linda Stanley in Colorado Springs, I think. Okay. So why do I say they're not prepared? Well, here's one of the reasons. They had a hair that was on the duct tape that they found with JJ Vallow's body. And apparently there was a lot of arguing back and forth and whatnot about, it's going to be consumptive testing. And then they won't have any of the hair left after they do the appropriate testing. And if you use up all the sample in the Lori Vallow trial, then there's not going to be enough for Chad Daybell. And so there was a lot of yang back and forth. And so here we are now within 6 days of Lori Vallow's trial. And it finally, the hair is at DNA testing. But guess what? They're not going to have the results back before the start of the trial. AK, does this sound familiar to you? Do you remember the blue shirt? Oh, yeah. Well, we're sorry to inform y'all. We do have a blue shirt, in fact. It's still at DNA testing. That happened in the Barry Morphew. The parallels between the Barry Morphew Comedy of Errors by Linda Stanley as ringmaster and this one with Judge Boyce holding his secret, super duper secret backroom meetings. And I'm sure that they have big fat cigars and brandy during these meetings. I think they're reading from the same playbook. I think they learned how to try a case all together, or should I say how to screw it up. So they have this hair. It is currently being tested, but it shall not be ready by April the 3rd. All right. So it's just shockingly ridiculous, actually. Also, I wanted to make sure I was clear about something. I'm not sure why somebody said this. Somebody said I was wrong about the phone calls that were turned over on the 27th. Okay. So the deadline that was set for discovery, where the prosecutors were required to have all of their discovery turned over to Lori Vallow's real attorneys. Yeah. Mr. Abercrombie is another Iris Eaton. He's the real deal. He knows what he's doing. So they were supposed to have all of it turned over before. Now, I want to know if y'all are having trouble with these adverbs. Before Monday, February the 27th. The judge says you have to everything has to be turned over before February 27th. So guess when the wonderful prosecutor turned over all of the 500 calls. There was some other evidence too. The 500 phone call, recorded calls from the prison, from the jail. He turned it over on February the 27th toward the end of the day. February 27th is a Monday, y'all. Do you really think that prosecutor didn't understand what that meant? By Monday morning, 8 a.m., I'm the judge and I want to know that everything's done. So by Monday morning, 8 a.m., nothing else needs to be transferred. Y'all need to handle all that. By the way, I'm done. I don't want to hear it. Monday, that's your hard line. That's what before Monday, February 27th means. But, Mr. Wood was having a little bit of trouble with that, and he didn't make it. Not only did he not, the order, exact words in the order said prior to February 27th. Are y'all having trouble with that phrase? Prior to February 27th. It doesn't mean February 27th at 10 a.m. or February 27th at 4 p.m. It means prior to February 27th, like way up at midnight. That's what it means. Sunday night. When that clock strikes midnight, it is now February 27th. And this bozo goes in and hands over a boatload of evidence discovery. And here's the kicker. He had it for 3 years. The stuff that they turned over the afternoon of Monday, February the 27th, when the order says clearly prior to February 27th, these were phone calls and documents that they have had for 3 years. It's disgusting. It is just, if JJ and Ty Lee, if they were your family, Charles Vallow, your family, would you accept this from the prosecutor? Would you accept this? Or would you make yourself a nuisance? Y'all know what I'd be doing. They would be very unhappy to know my name. I would be heard about this. But nevertheless, they did it. And so, as a result, now there was more. we're not done here, but it's egregious. To me, this was the most egregious because it so clearly says prior to February the 27th, and they show up on 27th like there's some, drunken frat boys that say, well, Big Blue ate the homework. Sorry, teacher. It's just silly. It's stupid, right? They then followed up later on by, finding more things to turn over. So ultimately, the judge was put into a position that, he had to act. I guess he felt like, he had to act. And what he did was shocking and incredible and unbelievable. And here's the big portion of this, okay? I haven't really heard anybody else talk about this, but just stay with me. After all, I'm known for wild speculation, and I have no shame. I own my speculation. I love it, okay? Now then. So the judge says, there have to be some level of sanction. I don't want to gut the case like, whatchamadoodle, Drama Llama did with Barry Morphew. But I got to do something substantial. So I'm going to take pity on Rob Wood and Lindsay and their so-called death penalty specialist. And then I'm just going to take DP off the table, and that's their punishment. Now, y'all behave. Y'all hear me? Y'all act nice. Y'all be sweet. Treat each other nice. And follow the court rules. You understand? That's pretty much the way that it went with the judge. Well, I've been giving this a lot of thought. And I've already made another video. I talked about it a bit then, but I've been thinking more about it. Something about this whole thing just really bothered me. And so I said in my previous video, I recognize that the complaint that Abercrombie put out, that the real teeth was related to the mitigation specialist. I believe that was the argument that was fruitful, and that's what caused Boyce to act, was the whole problem with the mitigation specialist. The reason that the mitigation specialist is so incredibly important and powerful in this situation, if you have the death penalty case, is what that mitigation specialist will do is they will go back all the way to the very beginning of the defendant's life. And in this case, it's, of course, Lori Vallow. Or Lori Cox, LaGoya, I missed one. Cox, that Amos or Enos, LaGoya, Ryan, Vallow, Daybell. She's putting together her own football team. Anyway, this woman with so many love affairs and husbands, she's the defendant. And so the mitigation specialist has to go back and look at her life all the way to the very beginning, in childhood, all of the influences that came into her life, good and bad, that were formative, made her who she is today, right? I can't even say all of her names, much less investigate each one of these marriages and what it means, correct? So this mitigation specialist goes to Abercrombie and says, oh, wait, this discovery, they just popped in our laps last minute. Dude, this is impossible. This woman's lifestyle is already, one chapter in her life is like a Gone with the Wind novel all by itself. And we got 52 chapters, sir. I'll never get through that. I can never accomplish what I'm supposed to do with all this new discovery. I cannot do it. So I think when that fell into the lap of the judge, I think the judge had to reasonably say, yeah, how would a mitigation specialist manage this, right? Well, let's talk for a minute about what this mitigation specialist might have found had they gone through with the investigation and accounting of Lori Vallow's entire life, starting in childhood. What might they have found? Well, hybrid Pisces. He also thought that Amber Heard was a victim. That's all I'm going to say about that. So if they had gone back into Lori Val's childhood, what would have been the one overriding theme from childhood up to today? Tell me. What would it be? Say it. Say those words. It would have been like, tell us, Lori, when did you first hear about the white salamander? Tell us, Lori, how old were you when you first learned about Joseph? Right? It would have been all LDS. That would have been the central running theme from her childhood all the way right up into the day that they went to Yellowstone and Tylee didn't survive. Correct? It would have been LDS, 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 LDS. Who thinks that Judge Boyce or even Rob Wood, who is LDS, who thinks that either one of these guys would let that happen? I am convinced that from the beginning, when they were arrested, I believe that some very Hermosa, one of the detectives' names got a Hispanic name. Hermosa, I think it's Hermosa. I think the church, in a stealthy manner, came in and said, listen, guys, listen. We know we got people going up into the damn mountains and acting out the damn rapture. We know we got people spending half of their daily salaries buying prepper food. We know that they're on the phone calling each other with pretend end of the world alert weekends. We know that. But that's not exactly something that the church sanctions. In fact, publicly, we tell people that you can't talk about those things. Those are things that we don't talk about as good Mormons. Only the bad Mormons talk about those things. It's certainly never church sanctioned, except when it is, according to Melanie Gibb. What are the chances? Have y'all been watching Scott Reich? This case has made him crazy. Listen, y'all, he's consulting his magic 8-ball. I'm teasing. He's a funny guy. I like him. This case is making him crazy, but because he's never seen a case, especially a capital murder case. He's never seen a case handled in the way that Judge Boyce has handled this case. He has been warning us that Rob Wood, that they were far too lackadaisical about what needed to be done, that Rob Wood comes across as arrogant and entitled, and that he, for months even, he was fearful. He kept saying, I hope they don't mess this up. I hope they don't mess this up. And we were all just kind of arrogant in our own right. And we were like, no way can they mess this up. We saw her in Hawaii. We saw that they abandoned the kids. She was happy. She's dancing on the beach in her wedding gown and wearing a wedding ring that her dead husband's money bought. Of course they're going to find her guilty. Of course they will. All of us did that. Admit it. Hermosa. Hermosia. You got it, Jessica. Thank you. Okay. So don't mistake. Yes, Detective Ray, Hermosia. Thank you. So make no mistake about it that I believe that representatives of this church paid Rob Wood a visit, paid Judge Boyce a visit and said, listen, guys, in no way can we have the church implicated in any way, historically or otherwise, with this nonsense. We can't. We've excommunicated Chad Daybell. We've excommunicated Julie Rowe. Jason Mao seems to be doing just fine. But nevertheless, I think they did. And they have powers. I don't mean magical, mystical powers. I mean the power of group membership. They've excommunicated people for coming out and telling the truth. That that the leadership of LDS is a misogynistic group of people that make active decisions designed to limit the education and power of the women in the church. They've come out to say it. And then they excommunicate the priest or whoever tells and lets it out. So with mitigation, this would have been a real problem for the church. There would have been no way to properly go through her life looking for, factors that would have spared her the judgment of the death penalty. Would have been incredibly difficult to do that, considering that her family is immersed in the LDS lifestyle and teachings. So it would have been impossible for them to do. And this has already been terribly embarrassing for the church as it is, and we hadn't even gotten to the trial yet. So when the trial starts, can you imagine them having to go through the discovery that will reflect that Lori's bizarre beliefs in magic and this delusion that she thinks that she's queen of the 144,000, that it is actually all based on things that she started learning about when she was 7 years old, and that Chad came along and he was the perfect reflection of all of her education from the LDS church. Imagine how embarrassing this would be to the church leadership. Or if you are ingrained in the church, as is Rob Wood and perhaps Judge Boyce. I'm not sure about Judge Boyce, but I know Rob Wood is. You yourself don't want that connection made, that these crazy people killed children and spouses in the name of their religion. The religion that is your religion. You don't want this. This would be a disaster for the Mormon religion. So in many ways, when Judge Boyce took the death penalty off the case, guess who else left the case? That's right, the mitigation specialist. The mitigation specialist is gone now. There won't be an investigation into Lori Vallow's childhood that might show sexual assault of a child in the name of a religion, as one example. It won't show those unusual magical types of thoughts, this idea of second anointing, which she and Chad Daybell clearly acted it out. And if you listen to Lori Vallow, Jason Mao, Melanie Gibb, then you have to believe and accept that Jason Mao is actually the elder that sealed Lori and Chad as part of the second anointing ceremony. That's so secret that no one's allowed to talk about it. They're so powerful that they've been able to erase the information about the second anointing off the internet. So even though we're horrified for Kay and Larry and Tammy Daybell's family and Charles, Tylee's brother Colby, and we're horrified for this family, right? This was terrible to take the death penalty off the table. But we also need to try to understand how it could have happened. And I really believe that this is about the church. All of these private, off the record meetings, all of these meetings, hey, let's end this and we'll meet in judges' chambers. I really believe all of this was all designed to protect the church from being implicated in what Chad and Lori did. It also spares Preparing a People, the organization. And Preparing a People is an organization that did hold these prepper meetings and escapes, camping out into the mountains and whatnot. They were sanctioned by the LDS Church, Preparing a People. This takes Preparing a People and gets them off the hook. Now they won't be implicated. If you take Preparing a People off the hook, guess who is spared from being thrust into the spotlight as representatives of the church and the LDS religion? Julie Rowe and Jason Mao. And then there's another issue. How are they going to prosecute the conspiracy issue without being able to make these powerful ties to this group of homicidal conspirators? If you don't understand the teachings of Preparing a People, if you don't understand the teachings of the Church of the Firstborn, how are you ever going to go into a courtroom with non-LDS members and convince them that this woman and this man who have imaginary portals and they believe they're kings and queens and they kill their children and their spouses, how are you ever going to make them believe it if you can't teach them and tell them what it is that is the Church of the Firstborn and the second anointing and Preparing a People? You must make those connections for the conspiracy to hold up. You see the problem? Non-LDS members will never understand the power of this religious component. They'll never get it. They'll listen to all this evidence and they're just going to think this doesn't make any sense. And it doesn't look like Chad and Lori were anywhere near when the kids died. And it'll be Casey Anthony all over again. They'll be like, how in the world are we going to find her guilty? Nobody knows when those kids died or when they went in the ground. We know when Alex was there. We know when Chad was there with Alex, but that's about it. So this whole conspiracy charge, which was really, to me, the meat of the case, the conspiracy charge is what they actually are trying to prove. They cannot prove it without being able to bring in Jason Mao, Julie Rowe, Preparing a People. They can't do it. Without the religious component, this jury will never understand the motivations of this group of people. They will never understand it, and they will never be able to believe it. They will never be able to believe that Melanie Pulowski divorces her family, abandons her children, and marries a guy that she's known for 3 days. They will never believe it without understanding the ties that bind. We do know that they have Melanie Gibb and Melanie Pulowski on the witness list. We do know that. But even the witness list is kept secret. The witness list is secret. You know what else is secret? You know what else is secret? Jury instruction. What? Judge, you made jury instructions secret? Why? Why would you do that? Are the jury instructions, Judge Boyce, are they going to say that the jury is to ignore any references to religion or the Mormon LDS Church? Is that what they're going to say? Because that is exactly the same thing as gutting the prosecution's case. So if Chad continues to face the death penalty, and currently they believe, Scott Reich believes that he will, but is not altogether sure it's going to stay that way, pay close attention. Will we begin to see the same unusual machinations in Chad Daybell's case that we've seen with Lori Vallow, for example? Why is it that Lori Vallow has technically now had her civil rights violated because they've taken too long to prosecute her? Why? Do y'all know? Of course you do. Because they kept saying she's crazy. They kept saying, oh, no, she's crazy. We got to send her back to the hospital and make her uncrazy. Then she'd get uncrazy and then say, no, she's crazy again. She's going back. And so with all this back and forth, they've run out of days. They're technically, this case is going to be overturned because of her violation of speedy trial. So you're like me and you're sitting around and you're going, oh yeah, well, she's crazy. So she's had at least, as a minimum, 3, possibly 5 full psychological evaluations, correct? On average, about 24 hours of direct testing is what it should have been, each one. So you think, well, we're going to have all this psychology, psychiatric information coming in, correct? Well, that is where you would be wrong. Why? Because the professional, the doctor, didn't get his report turned in on time. And now, because death penalty's off the case, Abercrombie says, well, we're not going to be using mental health information anyway. You're like, what? Oh my God. What did you say? This woman was in the hospital how long? Because you guys decided that she was so insane that she could not contribute to her defense or understand what was going on. You guys kept her in the hospital how many different times? And now it's time to try her for double murder of her own children. And there won't be any psychological testing results in the trial? Yes, that's exactly what it means. Why do you think that is? Be interesting to ask Dr. John why he thinks that is. I'll tell you what Dr. Jules thinks. I think they didn't want it known that she suffers from a serious personality disorder. But in terms of her, reality testing and memory and, whether it's short-term, long-term, interrupted, whatever, that she's fine. She's fully intact. She's got a bad personality disorder for sure. Well, not for sure, but I mean, she gives the impression her behavior of 17 husbands would indicate a potential, personality problem all by itself. So there's a reason they didn't want it in the trial. They didn't want the reports in the trial. And the question is why? Well, maybe because it would be very clear that no, this lady is not crazy. She does not have psychosis. She does not believe that she's a dragonfly or that she can go sit in the portal and have conjugal visits with the Chadster. She doesn't believe any of that. She's just manipulative as hell. So that won't be coming in according to Abercrombie. So that's very interesting, correct? And in many ways, the violation of time I think has been maybe this is Abercrombie's strategy. Maybe Abercrombie's strategy was there's no way they can handle all of this evidence if we don't give them the time. If we demand a speedy trial, we're done. They'll never be able to put together the proper prosecution with all the different evidence and whatnot. And if they do, we're still going to get it overturned because they've run out of time. So that's kind of where we are right now with the Queen of the Damned. So mental health testing will not be raised in court now that the death penalty is off the table. Perhaps the report was not going to help Lori, and the judge helped Lori by taking off the table. It would only show her manipulative personality disorder, conspiracy. I'm reading my notes. Sorry, hold on. Let me see if I covered everything. State must prove Lori Vallow. Okay, here's another problem they have. They cannot bring in their evidence for conspiracy to commit murder with Chad and Alec. They can't bring in conspiracy to commit murder evidence unless they prove that there was a conspiracy even to begin with. Think about that. But if you can't talk about the religious aspect, how do you make that case? Now, according to the arrest affidavit and the preliminary trial, the points that were justifying the murder charges was that Lori Vallow changed Tylee's bank account that the Social Security check was deposited to. She took it out of Tylee's account and started having the government give it directly to her bank account. That was number one. On September, that they engaged in actions between September the 8th, 2018 and the middle of 2019 up to June, I think, or June or July. For that, and during that period of time, they were premeditating, planning out the death of JJ. They're going to acknowledge that neither Lori nor Chad committed the murders, that the murders were committed by Alex Cox, but that the bank account issues and the trip to Yellowstone proved that it was a conspiracy. But they cannot use the statements of the conspirators unless they've proven conspiracy. That came directly from Scott Reich, and I'm going to assume that Mr. Reich knows what he's talking about. So in this situation, I definitely think Mr. Archibald is winning. I think he's already won. The state, Rob, Wood, and Lindsay have filed additional information. They have filed for a motion to reconsider based on additional evidence. This is going to piss y'all off. If y'all are not already mad, just take you a drink of water. Just take your pulse, breathe a little bit, and just say, no matter what is about to come out of her mouth, I'm going to remain calm. Okay, get your head straight before I ever say this. So when Boyce took the death penalty off the table, they filed a motion to reconsider. And that motion to reconsider was they gave more of their evidence, more than what they gave during the preliminary hearing. They gave additional evidence why Lori should be put to death, why the death penalty is appropriate in this case. And Judge Boyce denied the new evidence. It's not new evidence, they've had it, but it's just new that he was exposed to. They were holding it back for the trial, right? Because Judge Boyce refused to accept the additional evidence because it was turned over in discovery late. So it's inadmissible. There you go. We're right back at Barry Morphew. It is an obscenity. It's an obscenity. Oh, that's right, Diane. Yeah. So that's basically where we are with the Lori Vallow thing. So it will be, it could always happen. It could always turn out fine. They could choose a good jury and a jury that is no nonsense, and they jump right in there and they find her guilty. That could happen. But if you're anything like me, finding all of this out, I'm just really sick. And I'm having flashbacks to the whole Barry Morphew. That devastating. Oh, I would agree with you on that, Vicki, for sure. All right. Yeah, Bohemian Grove. There you go. Yep. Okay. So that's where we stand. That's it. Someone needs to Gregory. Ooh. Yeah, you're trying to get me in trouble, Gregory, if I say that out loud. All right. It is horrifying. Yeah. It's very upsetting. But again, you still can put your faith in an intelligent jury. And that's where we are. And we still have the Chadster. We could still get him. All right. So that's it for tonight. And this has been much longer, right at 2 hours. I really wanted to keep it at an hour, and I never do. But anyway, I thought it was important to bring it up. The problem that they're not introducing the psychological evaluations, the mental health aspect of this case is just shocking. All right. Okay, I'm sorry I ruined your night right before it was time for bed. If you don't mind, please share the live on your Facebook. The algorithm likes that. And hit the thumbs up. Leave a comment under the video, because those are like the magic keys that are supposed to make the YouTube algorithm pay attention. But other than that, I do really hope that you have a nice, pleasant night, and just dream about little puppy dogs and kitty cats, and don't worry about these heinous crimes. Just be glad you live in your world and not theirs.